next episode is about how much I like Google Earth, especially after having listened to an audiobook about geography. And in that, the bloke who was writing that book and the bloke that was reading that book convinced me that maps, traditional maps, are a crock. They put you in an algorithm. This is an algorithm that's pre-internet, that's pre-social media, and all that sort of thing. As soon as someone draws you a map, that person is already brainwashing you a little bit into thinking one way or another about what you're looking at. Some examples. Europe putting the world up that way, with north up there and south down here. If we Aussies had our way, we'd put it the other way up, and they could be down under. But apparently that has a bit of an effect on the way we see things. We kind of feel like that we're at the bottom of things, and yet we know we're at the top of things because we've got Aussie rules football and they haven't. So, but that's only the most obvious way that people do these things. I saw a map of the Celtic world once, the modern Celtic world, which was Scotland and Ireland. And it was all turned over, and England was missing off the map because it was just a map of the Scotland and Ireland. And Ireland was kind of more to the top and over to the right a bit. Get the map of the British Isles, turn it around, so that you've got Ireland up there and Scotland directly underneath it, and I think England ends up over there somewhere, but that's not even part of it, so you take that off and it really looks odd. And it makes you think differently about the relationship between Scotland and Ireland. Well, it can. Now, other examples. England was one of the big map makers in the days when maps became widespread. They coloured all the British bits a nice pink, which is a friendly colour. And with some of the countries they didn't like, they painted them a kind of nastier colour. Subliminal, Another thing, there's a thing called a Mercator map. I've heard of that one before. It's an attempt to project a sphere onto a 2D plane and still maintain the look of the countries so that they don't look all odd. So they still look like they do look like from space, theoretically. Well, actually now, because we've been to space and we can look, and we've looked down and taken photos. Right. But when you do that, when you project something that's used to be on a sphere, on a ball, onto a 2D plane, it makes the countries near the poles look artificially big, and the countries near the equator artificially small. Greenland, for example, I checked this one before, looks to me like about 5 times bigger than Ethiopia, for example. And I checked the stats, I checked Google, and it's only twice as big, that sort of thing. And apparently, and this is where, and you start to get an inflated idea of who's biggest, but also who's kind of politically biggest in a way, or who's most dangerous and all that sort of thing. And wow, Russia's big, but it's not quite that big, It's not that much bigger. It's only a few times bigger than Australia, not 20 times bigger than Australia. It's only maybe, I don't know, I haven't checked, but maybe it's 8 times bigger than one of the bigger countries near the equator. But it looks like 80 times bigger. And apparently, you've got your choice of what map you want to use. in my atlas at school, the Jacaranda, we used to have those maps that had little slices to. It was like, if it was a ball, it had been open like that, but there were gaps in between. I don't know what that one's called, but that was more that. But it looked ugly. So, but Americans during the Cold War wanted that map, the Mercator style map, put out to schools because they wanted Russia to look big, so that people got it into their thick heads. This is propaganda, that Russia was a massive threat because look how big it is. That sort of thing. And there's other things about maps that are a problem. As soon as you start to draw boundaries, borders, excuse me, I've got to do something, you're starting to alter people's minds about things. Look, I'll just take one example, Kenya, for example. When someone drew the borders of Kenya, before too long, people felt Kenyan, according to those borders. That it became real. Whereas if those borders hadn't never been made, the original tribes might have still felt more identity with their own tribes and that sort of thing. But this is why I like Google Earth, because jump on a Google Earth now and all of that's not there. You can turn it around, twist it and rotate it all different ways. Australia can be at the top and every country looks like the way it's supposed to look because it's on the globe and it's not flat. You're free of the algorithms when you jump onto Google Earth. I think you are.